The presentations where right away you're spending 3 slides telling me about how big your TAM is and how this is going to do a full hockey stick, traditionally doesn't grab everyone's attention versus like, show me the potential, not in terms of TAM, but like walk me through like one customer and how that's benefited them and FoxFold and everything else in between, right? So we've really, laser focused our story on that. And we just kept it really, really simple. We're not like reinventing the internet. This is not Web 3.0, Bitcoin, this or that. It's, have you ever used the toilet before and wiped yourself? Well, here's just a very slightly different way and all of the big sustainability and cost benefits that there are for businesses to be able to do that.
Ludo, welcome to the D2C Podcast. It's been a long time coming. We first met at the My First Million event in mid-2023, and you told me that you were a TP magnate. And so I was like, we'll have to keep track of what you're doing and bring you on the D2C Podcast. So here we are. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me about FoxFold. Why did you create FoxFold?
It's a big question. So, I was working in finance for many years, working with lots of entrepreneurs. And I think I had a bit of an entrepreneurial bug kind of brewing in me, but never actually took the big jump, just never had quite the opportunity to do so. And I think it was a combination of that on top of also having a 3 and 5-year-old who kept unrolling the roll and clogging up our toilets and our bathrooms and all of that. And I think the combination of those two things had me wondering one day, like, oh man, if I had to reinvent the toilet paper roll, like how would I do it differently? Very simply, I was like, what if instead of a clean slate, instead of that stupid roll on the wall, I would probably have it be like an inverted tissue box on the wall with interfolded sheets of bamboo toilet paper, extra wide, just like wipes, but extra wide, extra large. And you would just pull one sheet at a time, just like you do with paper towels, just like you do with facial tissues like Kleenexes and so on. But this would be toilet paper. And so hopped off the treadmill, called my best friend and cousin, who are 2 different people. And I was like, what do you guys know about toilet paper? And they're like, Ludo, like, what now? And I was like, no, like, hear me out. Like, toilet paper, this, that. And so we remember this date as being March 11th of 2022, only because that's the day that we started the Toilet Paper Boys WhatsApp group, which we still have to this day between the 3 of us, as kind of the original OG, TP founders. And what we quickly found out is that concept loosely exists. It's becoming a bigger and bigger thing across Europe, but the dispensers themselves are quite large and bulky and made out of plastic. The toilet paper itself is sandpaper at best, and very, very small little strips. And so we looked to just redesign that entirely. And then that's what started as a passion project, tinkering on the side, having some fun. And then, that it gained a lot of momentum very, very quickly. And every time I would present it to a hotel or a hospitality professional of any kind, you could see the little twinkle in their eyes of like, hey, you build this, I will buy it. And, fast forward 2 years later, and here we are as a full conglomerate now.
And the main value proposition, beside it being just something that makes sense, is that it actually saves money. It'll save each of these vendors, these hotels, a lot of money because they won't have kids just like wrapping their whole hand around toilet paper stuff. I'm also thinking that I bet the original TP conglomerates, one of the reasons they haven't innovated this, one might be because they're not as creative about toilet paper, but the other is they probably like the fact that you use a lot more of it using a roll, right? Because then they have to buy more.
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to your question. I'll address the second part first, is that to change the machinery to go from that converting of like the big jumbo rolls to the individual rolls, that takes a lot of money, and a lot of time and effort to keep it the same format. Now, a big reason why we've are the first to do this, at least in this kind of style and look and feel, is because you have to solve for both the dispenser and the paper. You can't just solve for the paper if no one has a dispenser for it. Obviously, everyone out there right now, in every bathroom you've probably ever been to, has a traditional holder where the roll of toilet paper slides on. So we had to solve for a new dispenser that goes on the wall that would fit our paper product as well, right? And that's a big piece, is the paper companies are typically not selling those dispensers or the hardware that goes with that. That's typically, think of your favorite hardware company in your house, the Moens, the Kohlers, the this or that, right? And those companies are not in the paper business. So we're a kind of a marry of the two. On the other flip side of your first part of your question on consumption, yes, for hotels specifically in that market, they're not having to remove that half-used roll out of a room. And unfortunately, a good portion of those rolls end up in the garbage. The running joke in the industry is that the staff can't go to the bathroom fast enough to keep up with the amount of half-used rolls being thrown at them. And so that's a big piece. But then the other part too is that because it's an interfolded format, you end up using about 40% less toilet paper because you're just pulling what you need versus a roll is unrolling itself every time.
Literally. And so you approached the market from a B2B standpoint first, which is pretty smart. Talk about your decision to go B2B versus trying to create a B2C product.
Yeah, so I started thinking about, okay, well, who would buy this? And then I started thinking, okay, well, in my house, if I was to sell this to my wife or even to myself, I would probably start it with one. I would try one bathroom, see what it feels, what it looks like, and then just the shipping and logistics of shipping one piece and then shipping you just a handful of rolls gets to be really, really expensive. Anyone that's on your podcast doing D2C businesses and all of that will understand this very, very quickly. So instead, I was like, well, who has hundreds of bathrooms in one single location? And then right away within the hospitality, hotels stood out in a big way. And then that's when we started talking to those people, understanding that that whole market, not only are they buying a lot, but they're wasting a lot on the back end because of the inefficiencies of a toilet paper roll.
On the back end. Did you do that on purpose?
There's no shortage of puns here. You're going to be on a roll here. Like there's no shortage of puns. As we start digging in here.
Talk to me about actually getting a prototype made that fit exactly what you talked about innovating both on the tissue side as well as on the dispenser side. There's also some innovation in how you package the tissue, I think. Talk about going through the prototypes and how you got this product right.
Yeah. So at first it was us tinkering with, pieces of wood, pieces of cardboard. I had a piece of cardboard stuck up on my wall here just to see how it would kind of feel with just Kleenexes or tissues inside that were not for toilet paper specifically, just to have that experience overall. We then started to talk to different industrial design agencies that were out there because none of us, the original three co-founders, have any design or building background really. So we approached a few different ones, and then one of them specifically was Box Clever, which is owned by a man named Brett. And Brett very simply loved the simplicity of the idea. He loved the sustainability piece, which was a really big focus for them as they were kind of growing as a company 2 years ago. He said, well, listen, guys, there's one of two ways. Either we can charge you an hourly rate, and realistically, it's going to cost you a lot of money to take this from a back of the napkin idea for have our entire engineering design team and everyone come on board and build this all out. How about instead we come in as equity partners and we join you as true partners in building this out, and we disrupt the entire industry together. We had pretty much won the lottery from that standpoint, and we became the fourth company they ever invested in, and we came on as full equity partners with them, and we inherited 20 to 25 designers, engineers, people who had built products for some of the biggest firms that are out there. And that was amazing. So then we went out to San Francisco quite a few times, met with their design team. They had by the time we got there, they had full 3D, builds and models of this thing that were 3D printed that we could actually see and touch and feel. So that was the dispenser part. The paper part was actually the harder part. So as you know, our tissues come in this kind of package. So this is toilet paper, for example, interfolded sheets of 100 per pack. Fits in our dispenser, and this has a paper wrapper, so you very simply just take off the paper wrapper, refill the unit, and you're done. Finding a manufacturer that would be able to not only interfold toilet paper, but then also have it paper wrapped on all sides like this was extremely hard, borderline impossible. And this took a lot longer to build and to find. And what was funny here is that we finally found one that could do it with matching the softness that we wanted on the tissue side, that we then were able to take that and bring it to a few others to go, hey, it can be done. Here's how it's done. And then get a few other manufacturers. So now we have 3 different manufacturers in 2 different countries who have that ability and capacity to be able to do that for us. but it took a lot of trips to Asia, back and forth, a lot of Alibaba samples to try to see, can anyone get there in any way, shape, or form?
And do you have different inserts for facial tissue versus toilet paper, for instance, or is it the same product?
So different. So, without getting too deep into the weeds here, your traditional facial tissues has what's called a higher wet strength. And so that ability is essentially when you blow your nose, you don't blow straight through the tissues. It keeps it tight in there. Versus toilet paper, the minute it hits the water, it's supposed to dissolve. So our toilet paper is the same as what you would normally have as regular toilet paper on your wall. So the minute you put it in the water, you'll start to see it breaks down into a million different pieces. And that's a big reason why you should not be putting facial tissues, aka Kleenex, down the toilet. It's because that stuff does not dissolve, and it will stay that form for a long time and clog up your toilets or clog up the sewage pipes down the road as well.
Because that's I'm going home for Christmas in a week here, and my mom always has decorative Christmas Kleenex or Kleenex box. That's the first problem where I'm calling it Kleenex, which is a brand name. You need to start calling it FoxFold, get that to take off. But it's another whole market for you eventually too, right? The facial tissues as well as in the bathroom, decorative boxes, themed boxes.
Yeah, or branded boxes. Like we created something like this, for example, for as a Fairmont logo and brand, so we can create lots of different styles and looks and feels. The facial tissue one was actually really interesting. We had not planned to build that out at all when we first launched this. But from talking to housekeepers and GMs, they were like, well, if you're going to solve for the toilet paper piece, can you also solve for that stupid tissue box? And it was from us having no experience in hospitality outside of just staying in hotels, where we were like, well, what's wrong with your facial tissue box? And they very quickly came back to us with, well, the same problem. We have to kind of remove it once it's down to the last few. We have to remove that whole box out of the room. Traditionally, those commercial grade tissue boxes have yellow tissues inside. Those all go in the garbage. And for a lot of these big brands, those little cube tissue boxes with the little plastic lip at the top to hold the tissues upright is one of the last few places that they actually have plastic within the rooms, which is shocking. So we solve that with now our a facial tissue box that looks like this. And shockingly enough, and I'm still beyond myself to say that this is the world's first refillable facial tissue box. And how I get to say that in 2024 is beyond me. But unlike any other tissue box, you very simply take off the magnetic lid. Inside are the tissues free flowing. And as I mentioned before, they just come paper wrapped, and you can refill the unit. Not too dissimilar from a napkin dispenser that you've seen in restaurants and other places.
So talk to me about the go-to market strategy. You said eyes light up when people understand what the product is, but how has it gone? What has been your sort of go-to-market strategy on the B2B side?
I think, listen, I'm a really big fan of MFM. I love it's brought a lot to me in many different ways. And the episodes that I love the most are the ones where they start to dig in on specific entrepreneurs in a million different verticals. One of those was specifically learning about Claire from Aunt Flo. I learned about Claire, reached out to her since learning about her through MFM, and she's now come on as one of our advisors on our board, which has been phenomenal. And she was instrumental in us building out our B2B strategy early on and understanding what were some of the key points and factors. I mean, to our benefit, for anyone who doesn't know Aunt Flo, she sells, dispensers that go on a wall in a bathroom with refillables of period products. I mean, how much closer to our business that could be is pretty incredible of us putting something on the wall but refillable with toilet paper. And so that was one big component. The other one was to just, from what my background and my experience of investing in a lot of startups over the years, was just the singularity of being focused on one vertical as tight as you can. It's really easy to start going into a million different ways. It's easy. It would be easy for us to launch and change our website to then be cruise ships and retirement homes and anywhere there's a bathroom, really. But it's like, I don't have all the money in the world. We want to have a big impact in one place. There's no shortage of trade shows just within hotels alone. So how do we make that a core focus? And that's why we picked hotels first as our go-to-market strategy. And we also knew that we had a lot of customers there that were ready to buy the minute that we launched. So we got really lucky with that. And that also attracted, once we did go and raise some funds later on, it attracted investors from that market as well, who, we're lucky now to have a lot of strategics who own a lot of hotels, who's now, they bought into the product. They were like, we love it. Hey, like, let us know when's the next time you're looking to raise some money. So we've been really lucky to have that come on as well.
And I was thinking about it versus restaurants, because in restaurants, you have my least favorite toilet paper product there is, which are those giant rolls where you've got to like reach up under those serrated edges and pull it out. And sometimes you got to slide the thing over and pull it out the other side or whatever. But I bet because those are so big and because they're so low maintenance, I guess probably because they have such huge rolls, those might be a little bit harder to dislodge than just traditional TP rolls. Is that right?
Yes and no. So, but they also maybe only have like 2 or 3 bathrooms, right, in a restaurant, or maybe half a dozen to 10 or so, like if you're lucky. And so the shipment piece is still the same, right? Like I still got to ship to that one place. We've done a lot of different restaurants across Vancouver. They've been great. They're obviously not ordering as much as a hotel with even 100 rooms upstairs, let alone 500. Would order, on a weekly basis. And so, and the shipping doesn't change, right? Like whether I'm shipping 1 box or I'm shipping 1 pallet, I'm trying to find scale and size and scale on that end in a big way.
It sounds like most of your like marketing has been sort of word of mouth and sort of block and tackle, like whether it's your strategic investors or people that you're going out to kind of reach and sell the product to. Has there been, what other sort of marketing endeavors have you had success with?
Trade shows was a big one. Because we have a physical product and we don't have, some sort of, tech platform, being able for me to show it to you live, face to face, and for you to touch it and feel it has been a really big one. If you were to go on our website and if you were any kind of business, requesting a sample has also been a great conversion piece for us. Most of the samples that we sell or that we give out traditionally converts into a bigger sale. And so we've seen a really great ROI from that strategy. And then the other one has just been to join all of the local associations. So, my co-founder lives in Toronto. And so between us, we're probably in about half a dozen associations across both Canada and the US. And they're regional. So we're part of the Hotel Association of Canada, but we're also part of the Ontario Hotel Association, the Toronto Hotel Association, the Alberta Hotel Association, the British Columbia Hotel Association, soon the Washington State Hotel Association. So we're trying to get in with all of those local ones and then just, get in there and get to know all the members and sponsor as many of their, smaller events as we can to really have a big impact. That's where we've seen, really that hand-to-hand combat come into play.
Are you bootstrapped or have you raised funds for FoxFold?
We've done two rounds so far. And a big portion of that was really just to pay for R&D, tooling, and obviously building up our inventory. As you can appreciate, and I'm sure everyone you've interviewed in the past, selling something that's on the shelf versus, something that's coming in a few months, sells a lot faster, a lot easier, and gets a lot more traction. So that's been a big part of why we needed to raise money.
How did you fundraise? I was just talking about it for a potential endeavor with one of my co-founders, and I was talking with Jeff, who you met, and he was saying how challenging that could be. It depends on the area you're in. How did you find it?
Yeah, I mean, I had come from a background of fundraising for other companies in the past, so I kind of, I had a bit of a cheat sheet in front of me of like, okay, I've seen what others have done, and I've seen what's worked and what's not worked. The presentations where right away you're spending 3 slides telling me about how big your TAM is and how this is going to do a full hockey stick, traditionally doesn't grab everyone's attention versus like, show me the potential, not in terms of TAM, but like walk me through like one customer and what's that's done and how that's benefited them and what kind of, how has your product benefited them and FoxFold and everything else in between, right? So we've really, laser focused our story on that. And we just kept it really, really simple. We're not like reinventing the internet. This is not Web 3.0, Bitcoin, this or that. It's, have you ever used the toilet before and wiped yourself? Well, here's just a very slightly different way and all of the big sustainability and cost benefits that there are for businesses to be able to do that. And I think that's a big advantage for us, is that everyone can relate to this story. Everyone understands it. There's not a big education gap. And so we were very fortunate in that sense to be able to walk people through that.
How'd you come up with the brand? It's a good simple brand. You've got the domain, you've got the .com. Anytime you're trying to innovate a new kind of product category, I bet a lot of thought goes into it. Talk about where FoxFold came from.
We didn't have a name, so we called ourselves New Box Company, NUBOX, and so for the longest time it was Ludo at newboxco.com, because we didn't even and newbox.com was already taken, so we had to do newboxco.com. Just to be able to have like legal documentation, start filing patents, and all of that kind of stuff. Then we turned back to the TP Boys WhatsApp group. The three of us started jamming on names over and over again. We knew fold was going to be in there some way, shape, or form, because obviously we're folding toilet paper and now facial tissues as well. But we didn't quite know the other part to it. Paper fold, box fold, I don't know, many different things. And we stumbled on different animals. Fox became one of them. FoxFold.com was 1 penny, not $100,000. So that was a big plus on that side. But then also just digging in a little bit deeper on Fox, like as a brand or as an animal itself, it's a global animal affected by deforestation. It's really soft and fluffy, but it's also cunning as well, and kind of can be vicious.
Very discreet. I feel like foxes, I think it's a great spirit animal for the product.
Yeah, I think so too. And so that's where kind of it started as an origination piece. We loved the analogy of it. We didn't quite adopt the animal into our branding. If you saw our logo, it's a double F kind of back to back. We didn't adopt. We had looked at different ways of maybe having a fox face in there.
And that kind of is a fox face act a little bit. Like I can stretch. It sort of has that fox angle, right?
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like if you cross your eyes and you look at it long enough, you start to see different images popping out, right? So so we didn't quite do that. A little bit, but not too much. The double angles there is actually a reputation of a bamboo, right? So a bamboo plant, which is a really big piece of what we do. The other piece is that double F is really like a stack of our papers. So if I was to pull out a stack, show you kind of the edge here, this is kind of the F. So the long side of the F with the two sides popping out. So that's another element of like where that F came from, is like us cutting that stack, on a diagonal. Anyways, lots of time. This is where Box Clever and their marketing team and everything else helped massage the brand as well.
I just have a question about logistics. You mentioned how it saves wastage, but I'm wondering, because if they come in these full pack inserts in hotels, if anything's like below half, for instance, do they have to replace that? Or how does it actually work when it comes to replacing it?
Yeah, great question. So our facial tissue box can hold 110 to 120 facial tissues, and each pack is 100 tissues. So once you're down to the last few, you can either pull it and put it back on top, or literally just keep putting it on top every single time. And so you have the benefit of adding a full stack, and we built it to be 110, 120% bigger than the actual stack itself. On the toilet paper dispenser, it wasn't until the end where we started to innovate on this, but every dispenser, if I pull out the paper on this one, every dispenser in this cartridge has a refill line halfway through. And so every dispenser can fit 2 stacks of our tissues. And so now, as you can appreciate, housekeeping is going in there pretty regularly. And so housekeepers, all they have to do is open up the lid. If they see that refill line, they add another stack on top because they know that another stack will fit. And then to our benefit, all they keep doing is just adding another stack on top every single time and topping it off in there.
Makes sense. If there's something you could do differently with like lessons that you've learned now that would save you time or money or effort, is there something you'd sort of tell past Ludo?
Oh man. One, I think, is I thought we could create things a lot faster. I didn't realize how long it takes to create, something what I think is really, really simple. So I have a whole new level of appreciation for my Nespresso machine and everything else that I interact with all day long, let alone this camera and the simplicity and beauty of an iPhone and everything else, right? So I took a lot of that for granted previous to being of something. I also have a whole new appreciation for sole founders. How people like Tara Bosch and others who've built incredible mega brands as sole founders early on. I mean, not just the lows. Everyone talks about the lows, but even just the highs. Like, you have no one to celebrate that with in the early days because you're by yourself. Like mind blowing in that sense, right? So I'm very, very lucky and very fortunate to have some incredible co-founders and to be able to jump on and celebrate all of those wins with. To get a bit more granular and to double click on maybe your question on the dispensers themselves, like it was also just not analysis paralysis of like we could keep innovating on this endlessly, but and this was actually feedback from Tara at Smart Suites. She was like, don't try to perfect it early on. Like just get it out in the wild as fast as you can. You're going to have feedback. It will never be perfect first time around. And she was absolutely right. So, lots of tweaks that we've made to our existing ones. We're already starting to think about version 2 for these new units. And we're looking at production for that. We're actually now looking at onshore production with, this whole Trump era coming back into war and tariffs and everything else in between. So that's another big one for us.
Interesting. Really cool. What's your vision for this business?
Well, my dream is that fast forward 10 years from now, you go to a hotel room and you walk in and it's a roll of toilet paper on there. And you're like, Ludo, check this out. They're still using rolls here. Can you believe it? That's
like a rotary telephone.
Exactly. So that's my dream, is that like this becomes the absolute standard everywhere else. And that if you're using rolls of toilet paper, dude, that's disgusting. Like that's so ancient.
Yeah.
So that's my long-term dream. Shorter term, listen, we want to have a really big impact across the industry. We're already, I think, making a bit of a splash early on. I mean, we've only been around since April of this year. This is being recorded in December. So, it's only been a few months and already, we're well over in 5,000 bathrooms across Canada and the US. And I think we can see the hockey stick happening now a little bit, which is really exciting, really, really exciting.
And what's your turnover? No one's putting toilet paper rolls back on the wall after they get this, right?
No, and that's why, once we own the wall, as Claire from Aunt Flo had mentioned, they're pretty much married to you for a long time, which is a really big one. So, we're looking at, for example, the economy to mid-scale level of hotels, which is a mega market. It's actually much bigger than the luxury segments of the hotel world. We're looking at creating like an all-plastic version of those that still would be incredibly sleek and unique, but where I would be giving you the dispensers, quote unquote, for free, but then locking you up on a multi-year agreement on those units. Because then at that point, now we own that wall, we own that business. And then as you can appreciate, the value of us having a customer sign a 5-year deal with us is really valuable.
Speaking of Trump, you could get some solid gold ones or some gold plated ones for Trump Towers. I could see that could be, if you're listening, Donald, I think you want to talk to Ludo here.
Yeah, we could create something like this.
Oh, boom, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, so
right there.
We actually built this one as a prototype for the Beverly Hills Hotel in LA, which was a beautiful property.
That's awesome. You mentioned patents briefly, and anytime you're innovating and disrupting a category, are you worried about copycats, or how do you think about copycats?
It's funny because the whole patent thing, I think the main reason why we did it wasn't so much because we were scared of copycats, as much as it was requested or demanded by a lot of investors or a lot of potential investors. It was almost like their third question of like, is this patented? If that question didn't come up, I don't know that we would have done patents. I think Elon Musk had put it in a really interesting way where he's like, you're putting landmines behind to like slow people down.
Yeah.
Now, whether those mines blow up or not, who knows, but it's more just of a scare tactic more than anything. So, we went through the process. We got patents now on our dispensers in the US, in Canada, in China, and soon in Europe as well. How much time and energy and effort am I going to spend on the world of patents? I think we've checked that box. I don't know how deep I would go into it. Now, where we are going to go deep into it is protecting our trademarks. That one we've gotten, really global exposure to just about every market on FoxFold, because we don't want someone else to say that they are FoxFold in the UK, for example, or wherever else.
Well, I'm excited to follow your journey, and I look forward to a FoxFold future as well, where we can shame TP role users. Thanks for coming on the podcast. It was fun to connect this way, Ludo.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out. And obviously, if you did want to try it for yourself, we just launched the facial tissue boxes on Amazon. So you can check us out there as our first D2C-ish channel to try to, appease some of that market. And a big reason why we went there is just because the amount of demand that we got from people asking for our facial tissue boxes and our toilet paper dispensers. So we're trying that out very quietly, very softly, just to see what kind of pickup we're getting there, and then eventually, my dream is that we have this in different retailers as well, and it'll be exciting.
All right, brother. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.